Hello everyone, this is Professor Vincent Toribongolan. In today's video, I will be showing you how an NPS or the Net Promoter Score is being measured and is impacting the performance of the customer service representatives, which likewise reflect to the performance of the business. Net Promoter Score. This is one of the most important metrics used in a BPO company that is used to gauge and to measure the customer's experience with the product or a service provided by them by the customer service representatives. This is a measure of how a customer service representative was able to provide necessary help and assistance to the customer. Customer service representatives must ensure that they were able to address the concern of the customers. In return of a good service, it yielded to a high customer satisfaction. A high score will eventually increase the Net Promoter Score. This is an example of a feedback from the customers. Beautiful product which match attention to detail, also great support, awesome stuff. Is NPS a good metric to measure the overall performance? It depends upon the organization how they look at it. But it was indeed a good and powerful metric to track and to monitor the customer service representatives' productivity, efficiency, and competencies. This is the example of a survey question used in NPS. How likely do you recommend the company to a friend or colleague? This is a main question. Usually, main questions does have also sub-questions. What is the primary reason for your score? What's the one thing we could do to make it better? What could we do to improve your experience? Which features do you use the most? What do you like the most about the company? What do you like the least about the company? Was anything missing from your experience? What could we do to make you say, wow? What did we do well? These are an example of sub-questions during the survey. To calculate the NPS, we will tally all the scores collected during the survey. We will compute and weighted the scores from the customers. We categorize the scores into 3 levels. Usually, a score of 9 to 10 is positive. A score of 7 to 8 is considered passives or neutrals. And a score of less than 6 is called the detractors. And we should avoid receiving a score of less than 6. To make this happen, we need to drill down what makes the NPS scores high. Alright? So in this case, we need to identify the factors or the drivers of NPS. Some of which are the following. Alright? So these are the factors that drives the NPS. Alright? So the first call, resolution. As much as possible, try to resolve the issue during the first call of the customers. And do not prolong nor raise it to a higher level representative. Because the customer service should provide this during the first call. Okay? They should do their best to provide the solution during the first call. Second is average handle time. As much as possible, provide the customer a solution as immediate, as quickly as possible. This is to make your time to resolve shorter. Alright? And first response time. Nobody wants to be put on hold, of course. taking the call immediately is very important. When you hear the phone ring or when you see a chat, try to answer immediately. Of course, an established company should be aware of the influx of callers. Thus, to make the drivers of NPS successful, they should anticipate the volume of calls, especially during peak season. Alright? To become even more successful, a company should start working on the drivers that has a direct impact on the NPS. Identify first which among the drivers are highly correlated with the NPS. They should start working on with this factor before going through the next factor in order to make all the action items successful. Alright? So, Statistics Doctor Consultancy is the solutions to solve problems in your business. We provide support to businesses. At the same time, Statistics Doctor Consultancy offers a course on the fundamentals of business analytics. All you need to do is to visit the enrollment form from the description of this video.
Alright, this is Professor Vincent Torre Bongolan, and in today's video, I will be discussing how to build and construct a model. A model that could predict the score of the NPS. Alright, so as I mentioned in my previous video, NPS is one of the key metrics used in a BPO company. Now, in this particular exercise, I will walk you through the NPS. Okay, so we will try to find out what are the drivers, what are the factors that affect the NPS. Okay, what makes the NPS very high? What makes the NPS very low? Alright, so this is the purpose of these exercises. And at the same time, I will also walk you through the interpretation of the result of the analysis. Alright, so this is the SPSS interface. So as you can see, I have not yet formatted the naming conventions and the file. Okay, so in this case, I will click on the variable view. Okay, so I will make the decimal 1 for KPI 1. So for KPI 2, it's also 1. KPI 3 is also 1, and KPI 4, 0. Alright, so this don't mind this one, so you can make it 10. It's up to you. It doesn't affect your analysis. This is just a width. Okay, so but to make it, for you to understand why. Okay, so this is the width actually of the rows. Alright, so since as you can see, then the first variable name is a string, so that's why it became a string. The type of data is a string. Alright, so the other variables are numeric since this is numbers. Now the values here, what to write here? For example, for example, you have label in the following name. Okay, for example, name 1 as agent 1, name 2 as agent 2, and so on and so forth. Okay, so if you have missing values and then alignment and then the measure of measurement or scale of measurement or the level of measurement, so all you need to do is select from this one. So as you can see, if I go back to the data view, the data has changed. So you can actually change this, something like this one, right? Okay, so as you can see, the facade or the environment or the working environment of SPSS is similar to the Microsoft Excel. So these are the agent's name. These are the KPI 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so on and so forth. So our goal here is that among these other KPIs, which one is directly impacting KPI number 4. Alright, so if you are working in a BPO company and you were asked to resolve what are the factors that drives certain KPI. First is to identify first what are the KPIs that has an impact to other KPIs. Alright, so based on some of my readings, these are some of the factors that affects the net promoter score, the resolution rate. According to HelpShift, resolution rate is a metric that compares the number of tickets assigned to an agent or organization to how many are solved within a certain period of time. The resolution rate formula looks like this one. Solved tickets over received tickets times 100. So these are the resolution rate. So this is one of the metrics that affects the net promoter score. All right. Another metrics that affect the NPS is the time to resolution. All right. So I already discussed what is all about time to resolution. But for the benefit of the other, time to resolution is that this is the time allotted to resolve or solve the issue being raised by the customers. So the shorter the time to resolution, the better, because in few minutes a customer service representative was able to help the customer, was able to fix the problem raised by the customer. So this is the idea of the time to resolution. Another factor that drives the NPS is the first call resolution. All right, so the very moment when the telephone rang or when you see a chat from your messenger, from the company messenger, and so on and so forth, the very moment that you saw this chat, the very moment that you see the email, the very moment that the phone call, all you need to do is to answer this call and try to provide the resolution during the first call. All right, do not escalate the phone call to a higher level representative and ask the customer to please wait for some couple of days because we will going to escalate this concern to a higher representative. Avoid doing that way. Okay, as much as possible, do your best to help resolve the problem. All right, so the goal of this exercise is among of these KPIs, among of these drivers, okay, what are the correlation coefficients that directly affecting the score of the NPS, and from there you may start working on. For example, there is a high correlation between the first call resolution and NPS. However, there is also a correlation between the resolution rate. Okay, the first thing that you need to look into is that which one has the higher relationship or higher in correlation. So take for example, the first call resolution rate has like 95% correlation, whereas the other metric has 80% resolution. So focus on working on this particular metric since the correlation is higher compared to others. So start from the most metrics with the higher correlation. Alright, so we will be using this dummy data, right? This dummy data and information to understand the problem. Alright, so the first thing to do is go to the SPSS. Okay, so as you can see, these are the scores. And then the second is that you need to test the data first. Okay, so this is the very first thing that you need to do. Undergo or subject the data into different cross-checking or data cleaning. First, it should follow the assumptions requires to perform a certain parametric test. Okay, so there are certain assumptions that is required before doing the parametric test. Okay, among of these factors or assumptions are the linearity assumptions. Other is the normality assumptions. And then you have to check the data if it follows the homoscedasticity in the variance. Okay, homoscedasticity of its variance. There should be no autocorrelation. Alright, there should be no autocorrelation. And then there should be a very minimal number of outliers. Okay, there should be very minimal number of outliers. All right. Second thing that you need to look into is that if one or two or three of these assumptions are violated, what are the things that you need to perform first? Okay, so if one or two or three of the assumptions are violated, the thing that you can do is to transform the data from its original type or format to a new one. Okay, and apply the different transformation procedure. Okay, and then aside from, if you already apply the transformation procedure, select which among the transformation procedure which makes your data more fit for analysis. All right, as you know, transformation procedure has many, differences. Choose which one among of this transformation procedure will make your data very fit for analysis. All right, so if you already selected the transformation procedure that will make your data fit for analysis, then you can start working on the predictive model. Okay, so this is the procedure. Go to the analyze, go to the regression, and choose linear. Okay, so like I said, I wanted to identify, to determine what are the factors that drives or affect this KPI. Okay, so I will be going to put this KPI 4 in the dependent variable, and I'll be going to put the KPI 1 to 3 in the independent variable. Okay, if you click on next, that is all about the hierarchical multiple regression. Okay, what is hierarchical multiple regression? Okay, so I will be discussing hierarchical multiple regression in my other video. But for now, I will choose this black one for now. Alright? So once you click the independent variable to this part, go to the statistics and measure tick. Okay? Tick all the test statistics that you would like SPSS to calculate. Okay, so the R-square change, the descriptive, I want to see the descriptive. And it should be at 95% confidence intervals. And I wanted to know if there are collinearity in the data. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, there should be no collinearity in the data. And then the Durbin-Watson. Okay, so what is Durbin-Watson? Durbin-Watson test is a statistical test that is used to measure if there are no correlation or if there are correlation in the variable. Okay, Durbin-Watson test for autocorrelation. Okay, so once done, click continue. And then plot. Okay, so I would like to know and to see in visuals if the NPS is following a normal distribution or not. Okay, that is one of the requirements or assumption in a multiple regression. One should determine if the value or the data follows a normal distribution. So what I will going to do is to put z resid to the to the y value, and then the z fred to the x-axis. And then I will be going to take histogram and the normal probability plot. Okay, I wanted to save the unstandardized and the standardized residuals. Okay, so you have an option if you still want to save all of this variable. Okay, as long as you know how to interpret this. But for now, I will not going to discuss all of this statistical tests. Okay, so to learn more about the unstandardized residuals, the studentized residuals, the deleted, and so on and so forth, all you need to do is to visit some of my video. Okay, so next is continue. And then the options. So this is nothing. This is just showing you the probability. That would be 0.5%. Okay. And then style, it doesn't help. So it was just a style. Okay, here, there are methods of doing the multiple regression. If you are going to choose or to select enter, which is the default regression procedure, if you choose enter, meaning to say all of the variables you injected or you included in this exercise are injected in the dependent variable, meaning to say we want to find out the impact of each of the independent variables to the dependent variable. That is, if you are going to use the enter method. Again, if you choose enter method, this KPIs, KPI 1, 2, 3, you wanted to find out, okay, you wanted to determine how this KPIs is impacting the dependent variable or impacting the NPS. You want to identify to what extent they are affecting the net promoter score. Okay, so if I will gonna select a stepwise regression, okay, what it does is to first identify which among the KPI, which among the independent variable are having a very high correlation with the dependent variable, meaning to say the SPSS will try to calculate one by one and identify which one among these independent variables are highly correlated with the dependent variable. And it should start with that. Okay, the model will start to that particular variable. Okay, and then the second one will follow. Okay, so meaning to say, during the first model, SPSS will inject KPI1 because KPI1 has direct correlation with KPI4. And then in the next model, SPSS will then try to include KPI1 and KPI2 in the model. And then in the next model, SPSS will inject KPI1, 2, and 3 to the model. However, SPSS will not do that in one calculation. They will not try to include that unless you choose the enter method. But if you select the stepwise method, SPSS will just then select few of the independent variables. Alright, so here is the next step. Click on OK and wait for the output to pop out. Alright, so I will delete log files. I don't like that. It's very it's making my file messy. I also delete nodes. I also delete active dataset. Okay, this one dataset, I don't want that. Okay, right, so this is the first thing that we need to look into. The average score for KPI4 is 32.1. The average score for the KPI1 is 6.6. The average score for KPI2 is 3.9 or 4. And KPI3 is 71.2. Alright? And then the standard, the corresponding standard deviation. Okay? If you look at the correlation, okay, so let's ignore this one, KPI4, and ignore this KPI4, okay? So thing is, you need to check KPI4, how is it correlated to KPI1? So as you can see, the value is 900, meaning to say KPI4 is highly correlated with KPI1 because the correlation coefficient is at 90%. KPI4 over KPI2 is negative 0.233. And then KPI4 to KPI3 is 0.867. Okay, so remember that I've used the stepwise regression. Okay, meaning to say, if we use the stepwise regression, what SPSS will do is to include the model, the independent variable KPI1 first in the model. And then in the second model, it will include KPI1 and KPI3. And it will not going to include KPI2 anymore because it has negative impact on the KPI4. Okay. However, those KPIs are actually significantly correlated with KPI4. Okay. All KPIs, KPI1, 2, 3, and KPI1, 2, 3 is correlated, significant correlated with KPI4. However, KPI1 and KPI3 is showing a positive or direct correlation. So what does this mean? When KPI1 increases, KPI4 also increases. And when KPI3 increases, KPI4 also increases. Whereas if KPI2 increases, KPI4 decreases. On the other hand, if KPI2 decreases, KPI4 will increase. Okay, so that is the definition of a correlation and how we interpret the symbol, whether it is positive or negative. Okay, so next is we're going to use this. So these are the variables included in the model. Okay, we don't need to look into that. Alright, so SPSS actually created 3 model. Okay, so as you can see, it actually created the 3 model. First is that in the first model, the variable, the independent variable that it included in the model is only KPI1, like what I have mentioned earlier. KPI1 is showing the highest correlation, 900, right? And then the second model, SPSS included KPI 1 and 3. And then, in the third model, it included KPI 4. Okay? How to interpret this model summary? Okay, so R is simply the correlation that exists between the KPI 1, 2, 3 to 4. Okay, for example, in Model 1, the correlation between KPI 1 to KPI 4 is 90%. In Model 2, the correlation between KPI 1 and KPI 3 to the KPI 4 is 92.2. So meaning to say, aside from the correlation or the effect or impact of KPI 1, the correlation will increase because of the KPI 3. That's why it became 922. And then so on so forth. So no matter what, in the 3, all the models are included. All the independent variables are included in the model. So since, as you can see, a while ago, I have, discussed and show you that the score in KPI2 or the correlation in KPI2 is negative, right? So that's why it has no impact at all. It was no impact, a little impact. It was just, it is something that we can say, there's a very little impact on the KPI4 and so on and so forth. Okay, so what we need to look into, actually R-square and adjusted R-square are quite similar, very similar. Okay, so it's very similar. So what's the difference is that in adjusted R-square, we are trying to figure out that among the KPI or the independent variable included in the model, this is only the correlation that it has an impact to the KPI4. And the remaining percentage, the remaining 19 to 18 percentage is actually with the other factors. So remember that I only included 3 factors. There are so many factors that will affect the NPS. And in this exercise, as you can see, as you know, I already included 3 models or 3 factors. So what is adjusted R-square is that it is giving, the analyst more opportunity or more insights to think of, can we include another variable? Because this is only 80%, this is only 85%. What if we can add another variable? What if we can add another factor in the model so that we can 100% determine the factors that affecting the NPS? Okay, so I hope you got that point. Alright, so again, adjusted R-square is very useful to identify the impact of the independent variable to the dependent variable. Okay. So the analysis of variance. So as you can see, there are three models. Okay, so model 1, 2, and 3. Okay, in model 1, as you can see, the result is significant. Model 2, the result is significant. Model 3 is significant as well. What does this mean? Meaning to say, all these models can actually predict the NPS. Okay, meaning to say, all of this KPI 1, 2, and 3 are affecting or consider a driver of NPS. Okay, so this drives the NPS scores. Alright, so this is very important. The coefficients. So we need to look into all of this value. Okay, so we need to check the unstandardized B or beta, and of course the significant value. Okay, so here let's look at the significant value first. Okay, if the significant value is less than 0.05, meaning to say the independent variable is affecting the NPS significantly. If the significant value is less than 0.05, meaning to say KPI 1 and 3 is significantly affecting the net promoter score. Significant KPI 1, KPI 3, and KPI 2 is significantly affecting the net promoter score. So meaning to say, all of the KPIs that we included in the model is highly significant with the NPS. Thus, it affects the score of NPS. These are the drivers of NPS. Now, let us check which one among the KPI is affecting greatly the NPS. Okay, so if we look at the model 1, of course KPI 1 is has the highest contribution. Okay, because this is the only KPI that we included in the model. So what does this mean? An increase in KPI 1 by 1 point will improve the NPS by 34.67. Okay, again, an increase of 1 point in KPI 1 will increase the NPS by 34.627. Okay, that is for the model 1. For the model 2, an increase of 1 point for KPI 1 will increase the NPS by 22.517. At the same time, an increase of 1 point for KPI 3 will increase the NPS by 0.70 or 696. Okay, so these are the contribution of KPI 1 and 3. So if you are working in a BPO company, try to work on KPI 1 because 1 point increase in KPI 1 will give you 22.52 in the NPS. Alright, so if we look at the model 3, an increase of 1 point in KPI 1 will increase the NPS by about 22.37. And a 1 point increase in KPI 3 will increase the NPS by 0.693. And an increase of KPI 2 by 1 point, it will decrease the NPS by 0.2 13. Okay, so what is the insights that we can get from this one? Okay, so since if we only looking at the independent variables that drives the NPS, I will rather select model 1. Why? Because an increase in KPI 1 by 1 point, your NPS will increase by 34.627. Unlike if you work on model 2, a 1 point increase in KPI 1 will only give you 22.52 NPS. Because you need to consider as well the increase in KPI 3 by 1 point. So if you're going to include this, an increase in KPI 3 by 1 point will increase your NPS by 0.70. Okay, so wise decision is that work on the first model. Okay, work on the first model and consider looking at KPI 1. What is KPI 1? If we go to the raw data, this one, this is the KPI 1. Ignore this for now. Okay, ignore this for now. And try to do something to improve this KPI because it has a big impact on the NPS. Okay, so another thing that we need to check is the histogram. Okay, so as you can see, so it's quite normal, right? So it's just normal. Let's try to check if this following a normal distribution. So almost normal, right? This is a bell curve, NPS 4 or NPS or KPI 4 is showing normal graph. Okay, so double click this one and try to check this one. Add fit line at total and choose lowest, okay, to check. Once you apply, close this one and then close this one. So this is how it looks like. Alright, so that's all for now, and in my next video I will be showing you how to how to drill down KPI